Just waiting here for a few seconds till it's the actual witching hours of 7 o'clock. And it is. Here we are, 7. Hello, my name is Candace Savage, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's Nature City conversation hosted by Wildabout Saskatoon. We are very glad that you could all join us. There may be a lot more people signing in as we go along because there's a lot of interest in tonight's presentation. Tan si kakiao kiawao, egwa tawao, Candace Savage Nutsikason, Kiwit no Cochinia, Maga Misaskotumanik, Kinwasis Nawikan, Agamaskik Nuwagamaganak, Maga Mina Askio Chiasqueo Omania, Apik Sque Stamakean Anoch Ka Tipiskak, Wild About Saskatoon. I'm not Indigenous, but my teachers, Charlotte Ross, Senapan Thunder, Joseph Natauhau, tell me they don't care if my ancestors were white or blue or polka dot. They say if you know a few words of Neheyawewen, it's good to speak them. And that's because Neheyawewen, the Cree language, is alive and has a spirit. And I hope that spirit will animate our discussions tonight here on the homeland of the Métis Nation and the territory governed by Niklutwasik Tahamatowin, Treaty 6. Or as one of my teachers prefers to call it, Witaskiotawin, Treaty. All of us are together on this land. Tonight's event is called Growing Native Plants, Learning to Partner with Mother Nature, and it's offered in that spirit of Witaskiotawin, all of us together on this land. We have the pleasure tonight of visiting with the owners of both of Saskatoon's native plant nurseries, Renny Grilz of Blazing Star Wildflower Seed Company and Koren Vangool of a Prairie Bouquet. So whether you're an experienced native plant gardener or a beginner who doesn't know a bergamot from a beetroot, you've come to the right place tonight. So our format is very simple. We'll hear from each of our speakers, and then there will be time for question and answer time. And we're going to be using the chat function for that part of our program. Rather than introducing our speakers to you, I'm going to let them speak for themselves. And Renny tells me he pulled the short straw tonight, and so Renny, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Candace, and thank you for the wonderful opportunity to join tonight with about Saskatoon and everyone online, and welcome Koren as well. It's great to share the stage with you. I'm Renny Grilz. I'm with Blazing Star Wildflower Seed Company. My wife and I own Blazing Star Wildflower Seed here in Aberdeen, and we're actually second generation wildflower farmers. And what I'm going to talk about today is a bit of our history of our farm, what we do, but also talk about some of the projects I've been working on regarding the native seed industry over the last couple of years. So a little bit about us. Our business started back in the early 1990s with my parents on the farm near St. Benedict, north of Humboldt. And we were looking at a farm diversification project. At the time, I was in university doing my undergraduate in plant ecology at the University of Saskatchewan, working for the summer doing grassland ecology research. And so I was bringing back wildflower seeds and growing them in the front of the house. And then in the same time, my dad had purchased some wildflower seed at a big box store, and he planted it out. And the only thing that came up was noxious weeds. We had oxeye daisy and baby's breath and a whole bunch of other nasty weeds that popped up. To this day, we still have a patch of oxeye daisy growing where those wildflowers were. So my dad got upset and said, we can make a business out of this. And so my mom and my dad led the business and started this as a farm diversification. So for ourselves, my career has taken me across the three Prairie provinces. My wife Lisa and I took over the business from my mom in the early 2000s, and then I ended up in Alberta for a few years, and then we brought it back to Saskatchewan. And so the business has grown with our young family as well. So those those three amigos there with my wife, their names are Salix is the oldest, which is the Latin name for willow. Linnea is our daughter, which is for twin flower, and then our middle son has the weirdest name, Jonathan. And this has been a family, multi-generational family business for us. We started out with wildflower seeds, and then we've been moving to native plant production as well, doing plugs as well that we sell at the Saskatoon Farmers Market along with Koren. And so we sort of specialize in both seeds and plants as well as part of our business. And so, and we, as part of our, what we offer is, plants that are, yearling plants, also 2-year-old plants, also some larger stock as well. And then in terms of seed, we do a combination of small package seed, custom seed packages, different designs. Also, we do bulk orders as well for restoration projects. And as we continue to grow the business, we're hoping to get more and more diversity with our seed mixes. Going back to my parents, this was our family farm in north of St. Benedict, or near St. Benedict, north of Humboldt. We started out in the early 90s with our seed production plots down near the old farmyard and an old slough bottom. It got flooded out. And so we ended up moving it to the top of the hill at the very south end of this air photo, at the highest top part of the hill where it was super dry. And it was interesting coming from a small rural community, trying to do something diverse in the 1990s was, a little bit weird in the community, but we got a lot of attention. There was a lot of people at the time doing native seed. That's when the Native Plant Society had started up. Mac and Lee Miller had their native plant greenhouse just outside of Saskatoon. Now it's across the street from the South Costco. They've been closed for numerous years, but there was a really growing interest in the native seed industry in Saskatchewan here. And then for ourselves, when we moved back to Saskatchewan in 2009, we brought the business back with us. We expanded it. We had our seed production plots at my dad's farm. And then we managed to purchase some land outside of Aberdeen. And so we have a small farm there. When also we were diversifying into heirloom vegetables, doing tomato seeds and garlic and a few other species. And we got out of that when COVID hit and just decided to focus strictly on wildflowers. And we're happy we've done that. And of course, being a producer of native plants, we're also a grower and landscaper in our front yard as well. So it's interesting living in a small town. A lot of people stop by to see the different wildflowers growing in the front yard. The bouquet in the middle was actually last October, and it was October, I think, 5th when these were picked out of our front yard. And it was funny. My son stopped by, and he saw the vase of flowers, and he took took those flowers home to his girlfriend, and which we were surprised because we didn't think he was too much into the wildflowers, but she really loved those flowers. So one of the projects I was very lucky to receive a scholarship for was through Nuffield Canada, which is an agriculture scholarship. And it's an international scholarship that allows you to travel to study a very specific question regarding agriculture. And my primary sponsor for my scholarship was the Nature Conservancy of Canada. And I started my adventure in 2024, where I traveled the world looking at the native seed industry and how to grow the seed industry across Western Canada to try and build that industry, build partnerships, and try and make this industry more successful. I was very fortunate to have multiple agencies and partners support me on this, including Saskatchewan Parks, Meewasin, Brett Young Seeds, of course, our own business, Native Plant Society, Saskatchewan Environmental Society, but also Skinner Native Seeds in Manitoba and Alkali Native Plants in Alberta as well were sponsors. So it was great to see the support from the seed industry as well on my project. but then also in-kind support from multiple groups, including Wild About Saskatoon and Pollinator Paradise, to help share the message about my project and what I was looking at. So what I was looking at was how to grow the native seed industry and looking at different models from around the world and meeting with native seed producers and industry and restoration practitioners to see what we can do to help grow the industry. Also look at those barriers and then also look at seed banking as an option for that long-term storage of genetics, but also how it's tied into the seed in supplying seed for restoration projects. Also looking at other emerging markets for native seed and besides traditional restoration, and then working towards a coordinated investment on how to get these networks going. So I traveled throughout Canada, Western Canada, down to the United States. I got to spend a couple of weeks in Brazil and then 6 weeks in Europe, uh, England, Ireland, Germany, and Estonia. And so it was a great opportunity to meet with seed growers from around the world. And what was interesting to see is the native seed producers around the world have the same challenges as we do here in Western Canada. Lack of equipment, lack of harvesting equipment, lack of seed cleaning equipment, lack of markets. Also, agencies or producers not working together and talking to each other as well, which is quite interesting. You know, here in Western Canada, we're such a small community, and we do talk to each other, we share resources, but definitely very secretive in Europe. But it was really interesting to go meet the different people and all the stories and characters that I met along the way. And it was interesting also going to Europe and seeing their wildflowers. There are invasive species here in Western Canada, and there's multiple stories I could tell about meeting with Ernst Rieger in Germany, where he's growing creeping bellflower, and he had a 5-gallon pail full of seed of creeping bellflower, which is probably the scourge of Saskatoon for most home gardeners. And so it was really interesting to do those visits. But then also meeting with the local seed producers here and plant producers in Western Canada as well, and developing those friendships and relationships. And so, developing those partnerships and finding ways for us to work together to advance the industry. So the outcome, my report was completed in January of this year for Nuffel Canada. It's actually on Nuffel Canada's website. And it's actually been shared globally around the world. Also, the Canadian Wildlife Federation is leading the National Native Seed Strategy right now, and parts of my report are included in their strategy as it's being finalized. So what I looked at was my recommendations for my report were, to have a successful native seed industry in Canada and a restoration industry, native seed producers have to be part of that. Also, seed banks, where that long-term storage of seed, both for conservation purposes, but also they can be part of providing seed to native plant producers and seed growers for that genetic material. Also looking at different government policies and procurement procedures to help grow the industry. And there's numerous examples around the world of where this is successful, including Germany and the United States. Also looking at market diversification. And it was fascinating to see in Europe the amount of native plants grown everywhere in these urban settings, along street boulevards to pollinator pathways in Estonia and every sidewalk having wildflowers growing in Tartu, Estonia. To in Germany, I came across in Hanover, Germany, where they had green roofs, not just on houses, but also in the garbage cans. So really unique seeing these use of native plants. And then also looking at that collaboration of growers and native seed producers locally and then also nationally as well. And so part of that has led to the creation of the Native Seed Producers of Canada. So there's a group of us native seed producers that have come together to form this national organization to bring us together to talk about native seed, to grow the industry, share resources. And right now there's about 16 to 18 of us that are working together all across Canada. And it's been a great opportunity to help advance the industry and to have that voice within the industry as well. One of the projects that we're working on is something called a seed source identification. And so right now, a lot of seed in Canada is not when you're looking at native species, it has there's limited labeling opportunities for that. And so what we're working on as part of the Native Seed Producers of Canada is a way of tracking the genetics of native plant seed, where it comes from, how many generations from wild, and where's the original source? Where is it being grown? One of the challenges that we find is, especially in restoration projects, there's a lack of seed available. And so seed is imported quite often from the States. And so if it's coming from the northern states, it's, usually from the northern Great Plains, like Montana, North Dakota. So it's, ecologically adapted, usually to our area. However, if that seed's not available, it's going further and further out. And quite often seeds coming in from places like California, Arizona, Kentucky. And a lot of those species are not genetically adapted to this area, also could be contaminated with invasive species. So we're working on this project, and it's based on a model that's being done in Germany for native seed tracking and that genetic identification. So it's something as ourselves as Blazing Star Wildflower Seed, we're working towards. We have some seed stock, some original seed material that my parents collected in the early 90s. We don't remember exactly how many generations it's been grown out. We remember which fields they came or which prairie fields they came from, but it's something we don't we're looking at building into our program. Also taking that knowledge and experience that I've had from around the world and sharing that with taking that into our own business and building a business strategy around that, but also sharing that experience and knowledge with other people, whether they're from the United States or people here in Western Canada, sharing those stories and that expertise. And what's interesting too is I've had native seed producers come and visit me from as far away as Ireland to see what we're doing here and trying to take some of that information back to their business in Ireland. And so, we're trying different techniques. We're hoping to increase our native seed production plots. Right now, our current native seed supply, we could do some small scale restoration projects. Quite often, if we get referrals for people wanting to do larger scale restoration, we'll send them over to Skinner Native Seeds in Manitoba or other people. And so we're looking at increasing the amount of native seed we have available, the diversity of seed, tracking those individual seed lots, trying to get some genetic diversity going as well, and then focusing on a few key species as well. One of my passion projects is Plains rough fescue, which is an endangered, almost it's a rare grass species, was dominant in this region of Saskatchewan, and it's becoming more and more rare. And so working on that increase of that seed as well and partnering with others on that. And then also providing more and more native plant material as well, both at the farmers market, at the Pollinator Paradise native plant sale that's coming up in May, and then also to other people that we're working with native plants. So with that, thank you very much, and I'm going to pass it over to Koren.
Thanks, Renny. That was awesome. I love what you guys are doing and where you're headed with your business. That's great. And all the important work you've done this year. I'm just going to share my screen. Hmm. All right. Here we go. And thank you, Candace, for putting this together and welcoming us with your beautiful Cree. That was really, really nice. Um, I guess following Rennie, I'm just kind of more, I started into this more as a gardener. And about 3 years ago, I launched a Prairie Bouquet native plant nursery. Um, and I guess my story starts, my partner and I, we lived in the city in the exhibition area. We had a small house on a big lot. And I was a gardener, so I filled it full of plants, and then I got into permaculture, so then I needed all the trees and all the fruit and growing a lot of vegetables. And quite quickly I ran out of space and I was like, we need land. And so I was lucky enough to find 10 acres just west of the city. I bought it in the winter, so I didn't really know anything about it. I just pounced on it because I felt like I was going to get priced out of the market. And it was just raw land. There's an old house that was falling apart on it. But in the spring, I realized, and of course, because it was west of the city, near Asquith, that it was just sand. And and I was like, I know somebody who gardens on sand, and that's Sarah Williams. So I had her book, and the first thing I did was order a load of mulch because I knew I was going to struggle with drought, and uh, and most of the land was just invasive grasses like brome and other and crested wheatgrass and things. Anyways, so I got mulch, and then what I would do is at the beginning, I would just round up areas, and then I would mulch them, and then I would plant into them. And so that's how I sort of got started. Um, Here I planted like rows of asparagus and other haskaps and food crops. And then because we weren't living out there, um, we made a compound, and then we planted our seedlings from at the time it was PFRA and then later Shand. And then you can see as the years went by, things would establish, and it was always about just like keeping the brome grass out. So using the mulch. To do that and to keep the moisture in, of course. And then eventually the trees would grow, and then the whole point would be to once they get to 2, 3, 4 feet tall, we'd transplant them out into the field. Because if we would just put little seedlings in the field, the grass would just swamp them, and they would die. So here's some pictures of us planting, or of just yeah, of we plant the tree, put the mulch around it to try to, and then just go out and water it with the water truck. Um, this right here is one of the first shelter belts we planted, and here it is about 8 years later. Um, uh, you know, Fairly established, and then planting another row next to it, just because we had no shelter. In 2013, about we got a house, and we put a foundation, put the house on, went to Warman Home Center with a credit card and bought a shop. It was crazy. And then we redid the house. We essentially turned it into like a big tinfoil hat, unfortunately for my cell signal. And then we, at the same time, we were able to do solar panels. And then on Kijiji, I found this used lean-to, so we put that up. And then the next spring, we're like, okay, let's start gardening for real once we moved there. Um, and then so we tilled this area, and you can see that it's just sand. Um, but I put my drip tape down that I got, and then this is that biodegradable plastic. We only used that 1 year because it didn't biodegrade in dry sand. So for years and years, I was pulling up strips of this awful plastic. So be careful with that if you have dry, sandy soil. So right away, we started just mulching there. So this here is the back of the panels. So the front of the panels, we did mostly annuals. That was the annual bed. And then the back of that was mostly perennials. And here's another load of mulch. I have so many pictures of loads of mulches because I just love them so much. And then here's another thing. So we planted along the driveway. These are all peonies. So right away we wanted to do something farming related because we're country folk now, even though we're so city folk. And then so we decided we were going to grow cut flowers and sell them at the market, and that's how we were going to like live off the land. We had this dream, of course. Um, the only thing with the Saskatoon Farmers Market is that there's so many good vegetable growers there, and in this dry, sandy soil, after farming it, just gardening in it for a while, we realized that it's really hard to grow really nice vegetables. And we had a really quite a short season. For whatever reason, we would come out to the acreage and there would have been a frost, and we didn't know when, but there it was. And then once we lived out there, we realized how frosty it was. So here's just some pictures of us. Um, Keeping the grass at bay. It was all about like getting some area with no grass and then pushing the grass out. So it was cardboard and mulch there. And then we grew, so this is the annual bed, and we grew lots of flowers. And for a few years we had good rains in the summer and things were going well. And I thought, oh, I can do this, even though it was it was a lot of work. And during this time we had two kids, two boys, 3 years apart, and so it was a busy time. And then I finally got to the market. Oh, do I have to move this? Anyways, sorry. Oh, sorry. I'm wrecking my presentation. There we go. Just gonna share. There we go. There, that's better. Um, so thank you, Ingrid. So yeah, so I got to the market and then a few years selling at the market. I even did a wedding one time. It was crazy. And then here, this is the perennials in the back. And the perennials in the back, a lot of them were actually native. There was like Heliopsis and of course sunflowers are originally from here. And they they would do really well because they were mulched, and then I wasn't digging up the soil at all, and so the soil just got better and better because it was covered, the mulch was breaking down, and I started to notice there was so many bees, and every year there was more and more bees, and all different kinds of pollinators, these crazy like moths, and just lots of different kinds of butterflies. And I didn't know the names of anything, but I just thought, oh, these are cool. I was taking lots of pictures. I started noticing the different species of bumblebees, and I got myself a bumblebee book, which is fabulous. And then I started like being able to find out what the species were, and I was taking so many pictures, and I just really fell in love. And I started feeling like really connected with the land because I realized that before this, there was nothing here but brome. And it was like almost like a desert, even though it wasn't a desert. And then what happened is that, of course, we had some dry years, and of course, in the sand. And when you have cut flowers, they like a lot of moisture. They like heavy, like richer soils. And so our plants really started to struggle, and I was getting really frustrated. And then, like, we had have plagues of insects. So these here are blister beetles. There's the Carigana blister beetle, the silver one, and then the black ones. And they would just like come in and they would just defoliate. They would defoliate the lupins, all my delphinium, all my columbine, a few other species, and it was just like terrible. And then I had grasshoppers like year after year. They'd start in the spring, they would just get worse. And it was getting to the point where it was hard to even bring flowers to market because they were all chewed up by all the grasshoppers every July. And then a lot of the plants started showing lots of stress and disease. On the right here, that's asters yellows, and that's spread by leafhoppers. And once you get that in some asters, then it's like your coneflower and your salvias, and like all these different things are affected by that. And it was frustrating. Also, I mentioned that we had a lot of frost. So what would happen is I had a couple rows of lilies, but the lilies they would get a late spring frost and then the tops would frost off. But lilies, because they're bulbs, they don't grow back. So you just lose your entire lily crop. So that happened twice. And then with the drought, you can see these are spruce trees and the new needles would actually start to curl and then they'd brown and dry off. And then every day I'd get home. This whole time I still work in the city full time. So I'd come home and here's my peonies. They'd all be laying down on the driveway and it was so awful. And I was so done. Didn't know what to do. Um, and then so I just thought like, what does this land actually want? I was just ready to quit. I was so frustrated. And then I looked around and I was like, there's still things blooming in the ditches. Like, what what is this stuff? And the funny thing is that it took me so long to get to native plants because I came at it from like the gardening angle and the food angle and the self-sustainable angle. But then all of a sudden I opened my eyes and I was like, what is all this stuff? I could walk through a greenhouse and name you every plant in the greenhouse. I walk into a ditch, out into the ditch, I couldn't name anything, and I was shocked. And because I'm a lifelong learner, I was like, oh my God, what is all this stuff? It's amazing. So what I did is I got iNaturalist, which yeah, I already had because of all the insects that I was trying to name. And I started taking pictures. And all you do is you take the picture, you load it to there, and you ask, what is this? And then it tells you or gives you a list of things, and you do your own research, and then you figure it out. So this is something every time I would smother an area. I didn't always use Roundup, and for a few years I didn't use Roundup at all. But what you can do is just smother an area with like a fabric or a tarp and leave it covered for 2 years. And then when you pull it back, you got this fresh area to start working with. And whenever I would do that, this yellow stuff here would be the first thing to pop up, and it turned out to be golden corydalis. And once I realized it was native, I was like, oh my God, I have native plants here on my own land. This one right here was something that was on the driveway. And when it's not in bloom, like you don't even notice it. I used to walk over it all the time. And then one year I was like, oh my God, what is that? And of course it was ascending purple milkvetch. So then on my commute to and from work every day, I would pull over in my car and I'd be taking pictures and discovering what everything was. So there was Gaillardia. And there's like wild roses on the in the base there. There's harebell. This right here was something I discovered. It was skeleton weed. And then this one right here, umbrella wort, mirabilis. That was such an exciting find. And because I was just always just wanting to learn more, like getting into native plants is like so awesome because there's so much to learn. And like one person could never learn it all. It's so amazing. This right here is a white evening primrose. That was shocking to find because it was like the blooms were so big. They're like almost 2.5 inches across. They were so beautiful. Um, and some ditches are better than others, is what I discovered as well. So the longer the ditch has been there, like if the road was put in like in the early 1920s or something, and then there was native like pasture land that was never broken up around it, then those native plants would get and they'd repopulate the ditches. And so you can almost tell how old a road is by looking at the ditch to see like what's actually repopulated in it, which is really cool. So this is a white camas. There's lots of this early yellow loco weed, and this is puccoon. First time I ever found some of this little mo moss phlox or phlox hoodii. So tiny, I had no idea the flowers would be that small. Um, this right here is the first time I ever found blue-eyed grass in the wild. Pretty awesome. This is a Penstemon Procerus. It doesn't look like anything when you grow it from a plant compared to this, but that's what it was. And then here's Scarlet Globe Mallow, which is a beautiful little plant that I love. So I'd be pulling over on the side of the road, and for a while, like I'd put my hazards on because I didn't want people to hit me. But then I realized if you put your hazards on, people think that you're in trouble. So I stopped doing that right away. And then most people started to recognize my car and stopped stopping and asking if I was okay. But then like you just get out and I've passed this stuff for 10 years, and then all you have to do is actually just stop and walk, and then you just discover these beautiful little worlds that probably nobody ever appreciates because nobody's just pulling over and looking. So I got really good at like scanning the ditches as I was driving and then just taking different routes home every day just for fun. This is Highway 14, and here is you can see where the RM doesn't mow, and then here's where they mow every couple years, and then this is this creeping juniper, and here I even found some lady slippers in dry, sandy soil on Highway 14. It was crazy. First time I ever found some prairie smoke or three-flowered avens. I was so excited. I have like 1,000 pictures of that plant, which is kind of funny. This is a patch of Gaillardia that I had passed so many times, and I knew it was there. But whenever I wanted to collect seed off it, it would always get mowed. Either the farmer would mow it, or it's right on the edge, or else the RM would mow it. But this year, I actually was able to get some seed off it, so I was pretty excited. This is a big patch of uh, you know what this is, fireweed. And so I had stopped and I was taking pictures and looking at butterflies and stuff. And the neighbor stopped and they said, "Hey, do I need to get rid of this?" Because they thought it was purple loosestrife and they were feeling guilty that it was there. And I was like, "No, no, this is fireweed. This is what you want." And then so they were happy, and now it'll get to stay. There's just so much beauty all around, and I had just never really appreciated it like I should have. But now I do. Buffalo bean, there's northern bedstraw. This is a lot of people in the area call this black-eyed Susan, but it's actually our native sunflower. It's called Helianthus petiolaris. And then, of course, the first time I found prairie crocus on my own, I was just so amazed. And so this is my land. A lot of it was just sort of degraded. It might have been tilled at one point because there's a lot of smooth brome and other invasive grasses. But here, this is actually June grass. And so I was like, oh my God, I have things. This over here is curly cup gumweed, which I was really excited to find one day. This right here, I think this is called broom rape, which is a horrible name. I forget the Latin name for it, but it's this little thing that's only like 2 inches tall. Found that. And then here you can see where I've got like a little round of mulch where there was a tree that then died. And but all around it was yarrow, and I never appreciated yarrow until now. And now I'm like, oh my God, yarrow. It's so great. In the city, I would just be like, oh, yarrow, it gets in the lawn. But now I'm like, oh my God, yarrow all over the lawn, please. That would be great. So what I started doing is I started collecting seeds um, from what I could find, but also I would order from ALCLA and Wildflowers in Alberta. I would also order from Skinner's and Prairie Originals in Manitoba, and then from Renny. I got lots of seeds from Renny. And then so I just grow things because of my cut flower business. I kind of that kind of got on the back burner and I started going into native plants because I was just like, that's what actually wants to grow here. That's what used to grow here. That's what belongs here. And I'm just going to start working with Mother Nature and not trying to fight her. And I already knew how to grow things, so I'm like, let's do this. And then the Sun's Room turned into that. Um, and I still have my membership at the Saskatoon Farmers Market, so I just potted everything up, kept some for myself sometimes to plant. And then I had that little lean-to greenhouse. I started getting better at putting things in smaller pots early in the season, so that I could fit more into that space. I usually only get out to the greenhouse around April 15th, and then only have to heat it till about May 15th, maybe May 30th, around there. So really trying to shorten that season. And then I pot things up all summer. And then that in the fall, I call this the pot ghetto. And that's where I overwinter stuff just on the north side of my house. And now I fill my truck with plants instead of with cut flowers. And there's me and my partner Darren at the market. Um, really enjoy the Saskatoon Farmers Market. Good people there. Whenever I had plants that, let's say they lost a label, or sometimes a plant will just start doing really poorly in the pot, and you're like, it's just dying. Sometimes if you can just get it into the ground, that's all it needs. So this is where I always have places where I can just throw things in the ground. So I've got different little places around my acreage where I have things planted. This is Rocky Mountain Bee Plant. It's a self-seeding annual. It'd be great to like let loose in an alley because like it once you have it, it'll just seed, and if there's any bare soil, it will really take off. And the bees just love it. Some other things. This is penstemon. Penstemon is great for the bees in the spring. This, of course, is giant hyssop. I seem to have two colors, and they're both fabulous. The bees don't care. This is sticky geranium. It actually does really well. I've got some seed of this and I've got that growing, and this is yellow penstemon. This, of course, prairie smoke, those little pink flowers, once they go to seed, they look like little troll doll heads, which is cute. This is a small flower columbine, brevistyle, Aquilegia brevistyle. Um, I sold this last year, but I don't have any more seeds. So if anybody collected some seed or is going to, please pass it back. And then this is Rosy Pussy Toes. This is just some mint. I'm really obsessed with bees still, so I have so many bee pictures. Starflower, False Solomon Seal, and this is dwarf milkweed. And then butterflies. If you want butterflies, plant some swamp milkweed, plant wild bergamot. They love that. And also liatris. Blazing star is like the best. The dotted blazing star or meadow. This is actually not a monarch, it's a viceroy, it's a monarch lookalike. I have still never seen a monarch out here. I'm trying so hard. I'm planting all the milkweed. My neighbors have seen them, but I have not. I was probably at work. But I'm hoping one day, and I will have a gazillion pictures of it. This is smooth blue penstemon. It's one of my favorite ones. I finally got a good amount of seed, and I've got a whole bunch started right now. And then just different kinds of butterflies, just some pictures I threw together. These are little bee lookalikes. They're actually flies called bee flies. Really cute. And here's just some pictures of I had plants just like I had a few sales and there's just plants everywhere. This year I'm trying to like have an actual sales area if we're lucky and hopefully on tables. And then these are just some of the pictures that we still have like a big garlic patch. We try to grow some food. We have bees, so we have also have honey, and we make our own mead, which is honey wine. And I usually have honey and garlic for sale in the fall as well. And here's some more pictures. I still have a lot of peonies. I planted so many, and I usually have some sales in late June, early July out at the farm, and then there's peonies and cut flowers for sale as well as plants. And then here is just the last picture. This is the garden, the perennial garden in the back there. Just going wild. Just let the giant hyssop self seeds, the gaillardia self seeds. Just let her buck. It's all good. Um, I recently started a partnership with One School, One Farm, so I have some kids coming out to the acreage once in a while, and yeah, it's been really great. And thank you. We can rewild the prairies one plant at a time. Thank you.
All I can say is, wow, I hope you're both seeing all the enthusiastic responses. If there was anyone who came here not sure that they would fall in love with native plants, I can't imagine that there's anyone left with any skepticism at all. Um, well, we have some comments in the chat. Um, I know I have 1,000 questions for you. Um, but I was wondering if you have questions for one another, Renny and Koren.
Well, I was just going to comment that Koren mentioned One School, One Farm Shelter Belt Project, and both of us are members, or we work with that program, and it's been a great opportunity for ourselves here in Aberdeen. We get the grade one, grade two class coming out to our place and planting for I think for the last 5 years now, planting trees and shrubs and stuff. So it's a lot of fun and doing some wildflower planting. And I know Koren, you've been working with them as well. So it's great to see those partnerships that occur, right? So.
And of course, you're both working with Wild About Saskatoon too, because on May 31st, we have pollinator celebration and native plant market coming up. Both of these fabulous plant growers and seed producers will be there. It'll be in the grounds behind Buena Vista School in that afternoon from 1 to 4. I'm hoping that you would both please put contact information in the chat because I know people will be wanting to get in touch with you. I know that both a Prairie Bouquet and Blazing Star Wildflower Seed Company are on Facebook and Instagram, so that's a place you can connect with them. Cara Leahy has a question that I think is really important. And she says this. I was told that you can't grow milkweed in isolation as butterflies need a trail of flowers. Therefore, if my neighbors don't have it, I won't attract monarchs either. Does anyone know differently? I'd appreciate any advice on this. And I want to start by saying that the thing about monarchs is their caterpillars eat the milkweeds, but the adults need a range of flowers. Am I right?
Yeah, and they love the species like blazing stars and asters, and so yeah, you need that whole suite of different species for them. I think one of the challenges for milkweed too, especially in the Saskatoon area, or for monarchs, we're on the northern extent of the monarch range here in Saskatoon. So Regina gets a lot more monarchs than we do. Winnipeg definitely gets a lot, and Manitoba get way more than we do as well. And so we're in that northern range because that species has seen that decline over the years. So, but when we get those south strong winds in the spring when they're on their migration, and we do get the monarchs popping up in the area, but not as common as they used to. Not when I was a kid. I remember seeing monarchs all the time. We don't see as many as we used to. But I think the key is having wildflowers there, having the milkweed, having different wildflowers, places for them. And so if they do show up in the area, there's a place for them to to forage, right? And yeah.
So we have a very lucky person here, April Garrett, who has 10 acres of land that is, as she puts it, just native grass. That sounds like a pretty wonderful thing to have. And if it's real prairie, of course, it won't just have grass. It'll have wildflowers in it as well. And so she's wondering how to get the native flowers to start growing in these grasses without having to till up land. Do you have some advice for her?
Koren, you want to go?
Um, I just sort of with my limited experience, I noticed that you can go to Early's and you can like if you don't I find like if you usually give something a good mow, then it'll sort of give like knock the grass back a little bit, and then if there are native plants in there, they can come up. Also, the one thing that I know that will self-seed itself into smooth brome is actually purple prairie clover, which you can buy over at Early's. That's all I could say to that.
Of course, spruce brome isn't a native grass.
No,
It's an
yeah,
introduced grass, which makes it, yeah, a bit tough.
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have some suggestions, Rennie?
Yeah, so yeah, Corin's right. It's one of the things is reducing that dense grass cover. So you can try going and mowing or haying it off, even they'll prescribe fire or something, and then finding that bare soil. The uh, the challenge is that competitive nature of the grass. So it depends if it's the native grasses or it's those invasive species like Kentucky bluegrass or smooth brome crested wheatgrass. But reducing that cover, finding that bare soil. So sometimes like a gopher hill or a mole hill, spreading some seed on top of that, and then it'll be dispersed. Yeah, then that gives a place for this wildflowers to start, and then they can spread further out from there as well. So.
Um, Jess Rideout is noting in the chat that there's some really good books and resources. Nature Saskatchewan has just published a new book about Saskatchewan butterflies, which it's really wonderful and lots of fun. And there are some really good books about but bumblebees too, as Koren was mentioning. So um, there's, lots of ways of learning. And iNaturalist, which Koren was using as well, an app. It's very powerful and lots of fun. A really great way of continuing to learn. Yeah, there's Taylor. iNaturalist, she says. Um, there is an interesting question here too. Abdullah says, very happy to see that this talk is happening. Native peoples are living in this environment for millennia, maintaining their own seeds. Is there a way to include them somehow to this type of initiative? Just curious. Well, I can't speak about this very well, but of course, there are Indigenous communities that do have their own projects. Do you are either of you working um, with those projects?
So, not directly working with, but there's a bunch of neat projects going across different groups or different communities across Western Canada. So, in Sioux Valley, Dakota First Nation near Brandon, Manitoba, they're working on a project with World Wildlife Fund right now on developing a native seed orchard. So, they're collecting native seeds off of their lands and putting in a native seed orchard and growing that seed out and then using it for restoration and planting it down in fields where their bison are grazing. In the Blackfoot peoples in southern Alberta at near Carstairs, Alberta, they're doing a big project there. It's called Nappy's Garden on the Blood Reserve. And they're actually developing their own little seed bank as well. So that long-term storage of that plant material. So they're incorporating fire and grazing back into that landscape and then working on taking, collecting that seed, storing it, and then using it for future restoration. And then right now in British Columbia on there's a big seed bank project that's going on. It's a partnership between University of British Columbia, the Botanical Garden, the British Columbia government, and several Indigenous communities and actually several native seed producers as well. And they're working on a big project on developing a seed bank in southern British Columbia. So there's a lot of great initiatives that are underway, and here in Saskatchewan, we're seeing it happening as well, right? So it's we're starting to see that momentum happening. So it's very exciting. So yeah, there's it's the potential is there, and I think a lot of communities are looking at these opportunities as well for that genetic conservation of the species, that knowledge and sharing that information within the community, but then also restoring their lands back as well. I don't know, Corin, if you have anything.
No, that was really good. I if people reach out, if they have a project, I definitely will help support them. And I do have some plants that are more like prairie turnip. That's more uh, like a something that
Culturally important.
right, culturally important, like sweetgrass and things like that. And I do usually have a reserve of that I usually may not offer unless somebody asks for it and it's being used in that way, in a good way. So yeah.
And of course, Waniscawen is
Mhm.
also working hard to restore the land there, and they're involving the bison in this effort.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and they're finding some really interesting response with the bison and a lot of different species as well, especially like buffalo bean and the response to the bison grazing as well. So it's really fascinating to see some of this work that's happening.
Ingrid is talking about the need for plants that will grow in shades. So, because many of us in the city, we're not really living on the dry, sandy prairie. We're living in the understory of a forest of elm trees. So, are there plants that you recommend for growing in shade?
Um, I would say star-flowered false Solomon seal is a really good one. Canada violet. There's a lot of things that can handle part shade as well. Um, there's even a grass that does well in shade called purple oak grass. A lot of things that grow in shade, they often are sort of spreaders. So like the violets are spreaders, all different kinds of violets. Northern bedstraw is a really good one for shade, especially for dry shade under that spruce tree, that really tough spot. There's a few things like baneberry. I haven't grown any of those yet, but there's sort of small shrubs like sarsaparilla. I haven't started any of that yet. A lot of the woodland shrubs are really hard to find seed for, so you almost have to grow them so that you can collect the seed and then also grow things by divisions. It's one of like future goals kind of things for me. Renny?
Yeah, and then a lot of those species too, it's yeah, the seed also has a unique ways for germinating as well. So it's not as simple as some of species like yellow coneflower or yarrow, where it's really quick to germinate. And so, yeah, these shade-loving species are really, really difficult to grow. And when you look in like an aspen forest or a pine forest, when you look in that understory, there really isn't that much growing there either, right? So, yeah, in these urban areas and where it's well shaded, it's it's a little bit different than a prairie area. It's a little bit more challenging as well.
But it's not that hard. We
No,
have
it's not that
all,
hard, but you have to be more patient. So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we have all kinds of things growing. And yeah, wild strawberries for shade. If you don't mind having a complete lawn of wild strawberries, yeah, there so many of these plants are so eager to be back that they will reward you with all kinds of all kinds of abundance. I want to ask you, April has another question before I get to mine. Um, Another question, if I if I plant a shelter belt, would it be okay if wildflowers are planted around them with the mulch? And this isn't just for a shelter belt. This question doesn't just apply to a shelter belt. It applies to trees and shrubs in the city. Is there a place for putting wildflowers as part of these plantings?
With One School, One Farm, the class from Bethlehem, they actually planted with every tree was three native plants at the base of every tree. And, because oftentimes, not often, but, trees sometimes die. The deer, the moles, the porcupine, like there's so many things working against trees out here. And so even if the tree dies, the perennials will take over. And so the effort wasn't wasted. So I always plant native plants with a tree.
Yeah, same with ours with our One School, One Farm project. We get in. One of our challenges we have is it's an old hay field with milkvetch, which is a legume that we're trying to get rid of that old seed bank. So we're trying not to get anything planted in their first few years to do the weed control. But what we're finding is the wildflowers from our seed production plots are starting to move in, and so it's really fascinating to see that succession happening in that hay field over time as our wildflower seeds spread throughout. So. Yeah, I agree with Koren. Adding those wildflowers in amongst those trees, it really adds to the diversity and really attracts the pollinators as well.
Nicole would like to know about the best practices for harvesting seeds from the wild.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Native Plant Society of Saskatchewan has a set of guidelines that were put together. Oh, I was president of the Native Plant Society back in the day, so that was like almost 25 years ago, I believe, when we put that together. And what we were looking at was sort of a recommendation of taking no more than 25% of the seed that's available in a given location at a given time. Only take harvested or seed that's ripe and ready to harvest. Leave the rest. Don't go back every year to the same location. Also, suggestions. Also is well, not suggestions, but get permission from the landowner before you harvest, and follow protocols as well if the landowner or if it's indigenous community as well, the proper protocols as well. So yeah, yeah, just shared the protocols there. So yeah, very important to be really sound ethics. And also one of the things to really worry about is you don't want to bring in invasive species as you're going in as well. So make sure your pants are clean, your boots are clean, your clean or your seed harvesting equipment's clean as well before you're going in, because you hate to see your favorite wildflower picking spot, a seed picking spot, become contaminated with invasive species over time.
Oh, all kinds of all kinds of good resources are suddenly sprouting in the chat. Um, I have so many more questions, but they would take us so long. Like, why aren't we protecting ditches if these ditches are the places where plants are managing to hang on? Um, Susan wants to know, would you recommend starting plants indoors or direct sowing outside? I'm going to answer that one first for myself. I would recommend buying plants that Renny and Lisa and Koren have gone to all the trouble of starting. But why don't you give a sensible answer?
Corin, you want to go?
Whatever you'd like. It's pretty easy to set up some lights. Just make sure you've got like a really good well draining seed mix. Make sure your lights are bright enough and also that you have airflow. That's the number one thing I think people don't realize. They should have an oscillating fan on everything. It makes the seedlings stockier. They won't get as leggy. It'll prevent fungal issues like airflow, airflow, airflow. Most important.
Yeah. Yeah, and also don't start them too early. Right, quite often when you get that middle of January blahs and the sun's shining in, and you think, oh, we should start our plants right now, and that's too early actually. So hold off as long to the end of February, beginning of March if you're going to start them indoors, because what happens is some species actually uh, grow really fast and they also become super leggy and they run into problems starting indoors. It's almost like starting your tomatoes too early or your peppers too early in the house as well. So yeah, timing is really critical as well.
To that, I would also add research actually how to grow that because a lot of seeds might need stratification, like a cool, moist period for like a month or two before. So really research that seed before you plant it because you don't want to spend the money and then have nothing happen. Although if you do plant directly outside in the early spring, that's probably your best bet because there's probably going to get a little bit of that stratification already just built in. As long as just really mark that area well because there's so many times where I'm like, I'll just put the seed here, I'll remember. You don't. So just as long as you label it, then just planting directly and keeping it moist is really a good idea.
And one of the things too, growing native plants is to be patient. These are perennials. Quite often there's seed dormancy. And I had a coworker that once said that, the seeds know when to germinate. So it was interesting in the drought of 2020, 2021. A lot of native seeds didn't germinate that spring until it started raining in July, and then seeds germinated. And so even though they were under in a greenhouse being watered, these seeds almost knew not to grow because of the droughts. So, these are living beings, and I think understanding that and giving them what they need and when they need it is really important.
Aha. Yes, I see a comment here from Paula Paula. I think you have a different last name, sometimes Paula Paula, telling us about really important work that's being done around salt coats to help protect ditches there. And, we're just starting to really get going with this conversation, but our time is up. So I know that Koren and Renny and Lisa will be very happy to answer questions as you meet with them either on May 31st or through the year. But we're going to have to wind this up for tonight. Thank you all very much for being here. And a huge thank you to Renny, to Lisa in the background there somewhere, for all your dedication and work, to Koren for the joy that you bring to all this work. Thank you all again for joining us. This presentation has been recorded, and sometime tomorrow, probably it will be on our website and also through a post on our social media channels. If you go to our website, you will also be able to see recordings of past presentations, some others about native plant gardening and other important subjects. So with that, thank you all very much for joining us and good night. Oh, it's going
So
to
much,
be
guys.
spring.
After third winter. Bye.
Thank you.